Hey, what's up, guys? Pittsburgh White Schwartz back with this time a multi-deck tech, bringing you the best decks that we've found so far with RWBY. Um, Joined today by Brian and Carmen.
Hello,
Say
hello.
hello, guys.
What's up? What's up?
Yeah. So I think pretty much we each brewed up a different deck here. This is kind of just stuff we've been trying out. Um, I think it's pretty much what a lot of people were expecting, like right out of the gate. At least the decks me and Brian have. Carmen's is a little bit spicier actually for once, but it's been performing really well for him. So we'll save the best for last there. But unless you guys have anything else to say, I'm good to jump right into it with Brian's choice standby deck here, which is actually what I was first testing out as well.
Mhm.
Your build looks really similar to what I was testing, Brian.
Yeah. So this list that I put together here, this was my first impression on the set. This is the only thing I've built so far in RWBY, mostly due to the fact that I didn't have trial decks until recently. So this is made entirely out of booster cards. It is a 3-color deck, splashing blue because the Blake early play healer is the only early play healer in the set, or one of the only good ones. Correct me if I'm
I
wrong.
think it's the only one.
Yeah.
It's either the Blake healer or the Nora
Yeah, the Nora's like
Yeah,
a
Nora from the
Shirogane,
field.
yeah.
the big Nora, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
the only other one's the Ozpin, but that has like a
then
weird clock
the
condition.
weird neg soul that doesn't heal though. Draw two, ditch
Hmm.
one. Then we're in yellow for the Jean combo off choice, and aside from that, the deck is primarily red. At level 0, we play 4 Yang clean cuts, mostly as our yellow splash, but also because it on play allows you to most of the time pump 2k power to a lane. This is relevant because our level 1 combo does give a character on reverse search and will be used multiple times over the course of the game, since it can also activate from the back row. We are running 4 of the Pira level 0 Rize because it's necessary for the RWBY combo. The RWBY level 3 combo requires that 2 copies of this be in memory in order for it to go off. This card is on reverse, look at top 3, take a character. If you take a character, ditch a card. And also on reverse, if you have 3 or less, if you have less than 3 memory, you can send this to your memory. And RWBY requires 2 of them to be there. The level 1 Pira bomb right below it fulfills the same condition. It is on play. If you have 2 or more other remnant trait characters, you can draw ditch. It's a level 1 bomb, which is relevant against standby. It can let you bomb out enemy standby targets, but is also relevant in tandem with the Jean combo that I mentioned a second ago. The Jean combo, when you play the choice, you give a character on reverse search, which can also activate from the back row no matter where Jean is on the stage. So your level 1 bomb can also facilitate that reverse condition if you can't crest a lane for some reason, if they have a massive level 1 character. Continuing on level 0, we run 3 Nora Brainstorms, pretty typical Brainstorm count. It's just Betty Brainstorm. It gives 500 power when another one of your characters reverses a lane. Sometimes that's relevant on your attacks. You can kill one of your opponent's characters, give the extra 500 power somewhere to secure your lane. This deck sits pretty small on the swing back though, so that 500 power usually isn't relevant in protecting your characters there. We have 2 copies of the Neon Cat. I think Carmen is going to talk a lot more about that card.
Oh yeah, I will.
But it is a on play. If your opponent has 1 or fewer characters in their front row, you can choose a level 0 character in their front row, or
Oh,
is it
it's
a cost
better.
0?
It's cost 0.
It's cost 0 character in their
Yeah.
front row and send it to
Dunk
the
it.
bottom of their deck. And it's also a coin flip. So start of your draw step, reveal top card of your deck. If it's level 1 or higher, it comes back to your hand to do it again. So pretty strong, especially going second. Lets you get rid of whatever your opponent plays at level 0, runner, Rize, what have you, while also being a plussing 0 itself and potentially popping back to your hand. 2 copies of the Ironwood. He is our primary filter tool in this deck, and also most of our blue splash for getting the Blake early play online. He is on play, reveal top. If it's a remnant character, add it to your hand, ditch. Right? No, that's not how that works. He is on play, ditch a remnant character, draw a card, and also ditch a card, reveal top card of your deck. Look at that card's level and salvage a character of that level or lower. So he is double ditch out, lets you get rid of things that you don't want early and potentially draw into things that do. Running 2 copies of the RWBY Climax swap. 2 mostly for consistency's sake and for the fact that since the Jean combo can sit in the back row and give its on-reverse search to anything, we'll be swapping into the choice a lot and utilizing that to keep our hand full throughout the game. 1 copy of the RWBY adds a little bit of extra deck speed to the deck on play. Mill 2, if you hit a climax, search for a character and discard a card. And it's also a drop salvage, so it gives you access to both zones and lets you potentially find whatever you're looking for at any given point in the game. The last level 0 I'm running is the Blake Spammable Brainstorm. This card is super, super important in this deck because RWBY, or this deck in particular in RWBY, does not have a lot of deck speed. The Spammable lets you both fix your hand to get whatever character you're looking for at whatever point at the cost of however much stock you're willing to spend. But it also lets you run through however many cards in your deck that you want to run through to potentially fix a screwed up deck state. Level 1, I mentioned the Jean combo already. It gives 2,000 power to any character on attack, and when you play the climax, it must give the on-reverse search to another character. So if you have 3 of them in play in the front row, you cannot give all 3 reverses to a single Jean. You have to spread them around since they have to give them to another character. This is why the Pyrrha Bomb is especially useful here. You can guarantee that reverse, even if your opponent is holding a backup. Just bomb them out. When the Pyrrha Bomb is sent to the waiting room after crashing as well, you get to send one of your Rises, one of the memory conditions for the RWBY finisher, from the waiting room to memory. The last card at level 1 here, 2 copies of this Nora. The Nora gets 3k power on turn, right?
Yep, she's 65.
Yeah, sits at 65, so is already another especially large attacker that you can use to get that Jean combo off. And also has a secondary effect that helps your climax consistency. On play, pay 2. Search your deck for a climax that matches a climax that you already have in your waiting room and add it to your hand. So this is another card that can help you either search for your standby when you're ready to go for your finisher, or to help you keep looping that choice over the course of the game. At level 2, I'm playing 2 copies of the Crow Free Fresh counter. 2 because, first of all, sometimes cards just get lost in your stock and you don't really feel like paying them out. But secondly, it's important to almost always have a Free Fresh counter in hand with this deck, because as I mentioned, you don't have a lot of control over your deck, and if you get into a bad spot, being able to shuffle your waiting room back at a moment's notice is especially helpful.
The Konokari strategy. Just play 2 free fresh who needs deck speed.
Yep. And plus you can you're playing choice as your level 1 combo. It's got a soul trigger. You can grab it off choice when you trigger that as well. The other card playing at level 2 here is this Velvet. This card is in case you incidentally trigger standby at level 1. You can standby it out. It gives global 1,000 power to your characters and is a rest 2 salvage brainstorm. So it replaces your brainstorm and gives global power to your characters if you happen to trigger standby at level 1. Level 3, the RWBY combo is a healer on play. Requires that you have 2 of the Pyrrha Rize, the level 0, in memory. And sits at 11k if all of your characters are remnant, or if you have 2 or more other remnant. But regardless, if you're playing the game, the RWBY sits at 11k, sits pretty big. Combos off the standby. Doesn't do anything special with the standby, doesn't have anything in particular that you want to play when you slam the standby, which is why this level 3 Weiss is in the deck. You just pull that out of your waiting room. It gives 2,000 power to characters in front of it and makes your RWBY sit at 13k cross turn. But after you slam the standby, immediately, it's not at start of attack step or whatever like Megumin is. It's when you play the standby, you rest the Ruby, you burn 3, and you choose the character across from it to clock kick. Something to keep in mind, you are choosing the character, so you can't choose characters that are, or that can't be targeted explicitly from hexproof or shroud effects like Attack on Titan's Armin. 3 copies of the Blake early play is another reason we're playing the spammable Brainstorm. And 2 free fresh counters, this card's condition is 2 or less climaxes in waiting room. So if your deck isn't sculpted to an optimal position to heal, say you're 3/4 of your way through your deck and you can't get through, you won't be able to play this unless you do something about it. And by this point in the game, a lot of your Rises are already in memory, so you need some way to get yourself in a position to heal. This card is also a stock healer. It is on play, discard a card, heal top card of clock to stock. So it plays fairly cheaply. And this card also sits at 11k, gaining 1,000 power for each character in your back row. I talked about the Weiss. It's your standby target for when you slam the standby for Ruby. But if you do have this card in hand and you have to play it, it does heal when it comes down from your hand. So this deck is playing 9 healers on play. The Neapolitan, the Neo, is on play. It's yet another way to provide climax consistency to this deck. On play, you may pay 1 and salvage a climax from your waiting room back to your hand. So this card allows you to just grab your standby whenever you're going for your Ruby. And its second effect also allows you to take 2 characters from your opponent's waiting room and put them back onto your opponent's stage in any positions. So you are able to not only grab the climax for Ruby, but also provide clock kick targets for your Ruby combos as well.
Yeah, I think it's oh.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I was just gonna.
I was gonna hop in here and say the I think the Neo is like it feels super essential if you're focusing solely on the Ruby top end. Maybe if you're like splitting it with something else, because there's a lot of really good off finishers in Ruby, or like you'll see in my 8 standby build, you have 2 different finishers you can kind of go into, but when you're capping out with solely Ruby, it's especially since you're playing standby in the deck too. If your board gets a little bit too beefy, or even if you just get a little too careless and leave a level 1 in your front row or something, or even level 0s. If you have beefier level 0s, your opponent can just crash their little shitters into it, and they can completely dictate your final turn in that sense, not letting you get any combo off whatsoever. And unlike something like, because I think this deck compares a lot to Konosuba.
Yes.
We talked about this in our set review, how the clock kicking finisher, like you just clock kick their whole field and you do a bunch of burn damage, and that can really take people from, a safe damage number to dead very quickly. But with Konosuba, even if you didn't get left to field, you had a lot of other ways to push damage. The off finishers in Konosuba had a lot more reach. They were bigger burns.
Yeah, the burn 5 in Konosuba. You also had the 2 climax Fumio and the stock swap on a backup event.
Yeah, so you don't really have that with Ruby. So assuming that like you don't crash out your board going into your kill turn with this deck, like even if you just have level 0s or weak stuff in the front, a savvy opponent can still just, they're going to smell the Ruby combo coming a mile away, and they'll just crash level 0s into you, and then you don't have any reverses. So being able to threaten the Neapolitan to fill up your opponent's field is actually super important.
Yeah, to make sure.
That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, to make sure your combo still works, you play the Neo. She's a little bit of insurance in case your opponent does try to play around your combo. Hexproof characters are still a problem, though. And the last card in my deck here is the Salem. Is another toolboxy card. On play, you can pay 1. If you do, Icy Tail your opponent for 4. That is, mill the bottom 4 cards of your opponent's deck. For each climax you hit, burn them for that much. Or you can stock swap your opponent. You can put all of their stock into their waiting room and put the top X cards of your opponent's deck into their stock, where X is the number of cards that was previously in their stock. So stock swap, as we talk about a lot on this channel, is a very important effect to have, even if you never intend to play it. You can force your opponent to play on a smaller amount of stock and not compress as hard as they were planning to, just by letting your opponent know that you are in fact playing stock swap in your deck and could screw with their game plan, screw with their compression if they do decide to go that far. The Salem also offers the ability to do a little bit of extra main phase burn. The RWBY combo in particular wants to kill the opponent from 3-1, from level 3 with 1 card in clock, due to the fact that it clock shoots 3 characters if you manage to tri-field it, and then burns 3 times. So you get them up to 3-4, and then you burn for 3, burn for 3, burn for 3. And if any of those stick, you win the game. So Salem offers an additional way to try to get that 1 extra damage to get them up to 3-1 before going for the RWBY combo, if you aren't in a position where stock swap is good.
Also for 5 instead of 4. It's a little bit better.
Is it for 5? Okay.
Yeah, it's for 5. So
I've never actually used it, but there's the use case for it is what I was just explaining.
The Salem has been a really good card. I think it's just as good as we thought it would be. It's like,
I mean, it's
you add a stock swap to your hand, and then your opponent goes, "Huh, I'm playing around stock swap now, aren't I?" And then if they try to pay out their stock, and they can't do the line of paying out their stock and leaving a small compressed deck, because then they get punished by Salem anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's like a card that you can grab, and if your opponent starts playing around it, it's still a functional card. And it's an 11k beater. It has the same power condition as Blake. So they're both 11ks if you have a back row.
But yeah, this deck on the whole has been performing for me really well so far. I haven't had the chance to brew up and play with anything else, but this was my knee-jerk reaction to the set, and it hasn't let me down so far. So in 5 or 6 games I've played with it.
I'm still sus on the deck speed, man, with Sean. That's the big thing I see when I see Sean.
Mm.
I gotta keep mentioning it. I know you mentioned it quite a bit too. It's like, because I've played decks where it's like your only deck speed tool outside of like maybe your combo is for Rize, and it's still not enough.
Yeah.
Like, gotta have something else.
I can't say I've had many issues so far, but again, it's a small sample size of games, and maybe I'm just a sack. So I'll keep testing.
It is hard to tell, right? Yeah, because there hasn't been a lot of testing. We've had the set in our hands since the 22nd, and there's been
a week or something.
Was one holiday and then another holiday on the horizon. So it's been a very limited amount of testing, but testing nonetheless. So all smoke testing builds and whatnot. So good to see. The 2 refresh probably helps a lot. The 2 refresh counter.
Yeah, absolutely. Always having it in hand is extremely relevant in a list like this, I feel like.
Yeah.
I'd say also in terms of deck speed, I was playing around with Choice Standby a bit too, a pretty similar list to what Brian has here. And I experienced a couple deck speed issues as well with the John combo, but I think RWBY as a set has the tools you can tech in for that if you need it. Whether it's like at level 0 they have a lot of options, whether it's the RWBY runner from the trial deck, which mills 2 on play. You have the Zwei that Brian's running here that mills 2 on play. There's also the back row runner from the trial deck that you can pay 1 and sacrifice it, look at 4 cards. I think there's like an actual proper Rumia in the set as well.
Yeah, there is.
So and then the Lyren Ricky looks at 3 cards. So there are deck speed tools if you want them, but there's just so many. A lot of those deck speed tools are at level 0, and there's just so many good level 0s in RWBY to choose from.
Or zeros you have to play because you're playing
the
RWBY top end. Yeah, I think you're gonna see that as we move to 8 standby 2.
That's not a problem because like the Pyrrha does accelerate you through your deck.
Yeah, the Rize is fine. On reverse, it's a little bit of an awkward timing, but the card has felt fine so far in play.
It deletes itself. That's the best part of
Yeah.
the card. So that
Agreed.
it's not a liability later.
Yeah, the Pyrrha's felt incredible to me so far, the level 0. One question I did have about your list, Brian,
Yeah.
if I may.
Go for it.
So I was looking at your list and like comparing it to mine. I'm like, wondering like where you were able to fit in all like the tech cards that I wasn't able to.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, like you were able to fit a lot more Pyrrhas in at level 1, the bomb Pyrrha, than I was able to. As well as being able to fit the 2 Weisses in there at level 3, which I really like. Which I do want to ask how that Weiss has been performing for you, but that's like a tertiary question there. My real question here is, how does it feel not really having any level 2 standby targets in the deck? You have the 1 copy of the Velvet Assist, but no like traditional 2/2s.
Yeah, hasn't felt too bad so far. Then again, maybe I'm getting lucky and just not triggering standby at level 1.
Mhm.
But I feel like in those cases you're still pretty early on in your game. You're level 1. You add an extra John to the board. You try to get another Pyrrha Ricky out to get to memory. You just take the little advantages instead of trying to push a 2/2 standby target and go for the kill with Ruby at level 3. Has been my game plan, and that's been working well enough for me. To the point where I don't think 2/2 standby targets would improve this deck very much, because I'm not gunning for standby at level 1. I'm trying to repeat the Jean combo, loop the Jean combo up through level 3.
I see. Okay, I mean, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, if you did want to fit 2/2s in, I mean, you probably could cut like a couple of your level 1s or something, and
Oh, sure,
get
yeah.
a couple in there.
I don't think
I think
I
that's
need.
what I did
Yeah,
personally.
I don't think I need 2 Noras at level 1. I could probably cut one of the Weisses at level 3. But I mean, it's all multi counts for consistency. Yeah, and to answer your other question, the Weiss at level 3 has felt extremely powerful. The Ruby sitting at 13k cross turn means that less of your lanes get answered, and if you can get into another standby, especially since you have a lot of ways to do so with the Neo and the Nora and the Climax swap, you can just go for another turn of your combo if your opponent doesn't kill you.
I thought the Nora 2 was your beater, since she's a 6/5 to pair with the Jean.
Right, it's also a beater with the Jean, but it's additionally a climax consistency tool that lets you get into another climax when you need it.
Yeah. Hey, you could probably squeeze like 2/2s in here, but I have some thoughts on 2/2s in the hybrid builds anyway, but I can talk about that when I get to the last deck here. We can move on to 8 standby, right?
Yeah, go for it. Mm-hmm.
All right, Andy, your go.
Alrighty. So a lot of same faces in this deck as the choice standby. We're also running the Ruby at the top end here. So we got 4 copies of the Pyrrha. I gushed a lot about that card during the set review too. I just really love that Pyrrha card in general. Just being able to go to memory for freeze, really really great, and I like the Rize effect. So I'd probably be running the card anyway, but it's definitely feels very very good, because Ruby is a little hard up for deck speed if you're not running the draw deck combo. 3 copies of the Ruby Rose Runner from the Trowel deck. Mills 2 cards on play to get extra power, and it's just a mill runner. I have it in here because it's extra mill power for standby, just to help me get targets in the graveyard early so I can hit my standbys. 2 copies of the Yang Clean Cut. Seeing a Clean Cut at 2 might be a little bit puzzling at first. But I'm running it more so. It's kind of like a hybrid option for me. Right, so it is a Clean Cut that I can use early on to get some advantage. Which is extra nice since 8 standby doesn't have a plussing level 1 combo in this set. But it's there also later in the game, so I can use it for the 2000 power pump on play. So in matchups where I'm maybe playing against another standby deck or something where my opponent has a bigger card on field, it can help my standby targets push over theirs, hopefully. So even throughout the game, it's like a 1 of or 2 of that you can salvage if you need it. 2 copies of the Ironwood. Just an overall good card for standby, being able to like glimpse the top card of your deck and see what you're triggering, if it's going to be a standby, or lets you move the top card of your deck if you want to try to accelerate into a standby, and it lets you, if you're clogging out on your standby targets in hand and need stuff from graveyard, you can switch those around. You know, discard your big boys and salvage a filtering card if you need to. And he's also probably just the best blue fix the set has. I'm not going as heavy on blue as some people, but I still felt it was important to fit in a couple copies of the Blake early play. Because the early play condition does go really nicely with standby, not needing a full field for it. And always nice to have an early play healer. So the James Ironwood felt like a pretty solid include. 2 copies of the Brainstorm. You could run 3 if you really wanted. I think 2 is probably fine. You have like 8 standbys in the deck too, so if you really need to, you can standby 1 out to your back row. But you only really ever need to have 1 Brainstormer on the field, and you don't need it like immediately right away at the start of the game, so you have some time to get into it. So that's why I'm on 2. 1 of the Climax Swapper. I like the level 0 Climax Swapper in RWBY. It's probably my preferred Climax getting card. I think the Nora that Brian had in his deck at level 1, I think that's a really good card, but it was just a little more expensive than I wanted to go for. And I also wanted to like pump up my level 0 count a little bit too. And the Neapolitan is really good, but it only comes online at level 3, so early in the game, the level 0 is my preferred Climax switching option. And the on-play top check and either leave it on top or send the card to waiting room is really nice because it can help put standby targets into your waiting room and accelerate you into triggering a standby. 1 copy of the Blake Search Brainstorm. It's really nice that this is spammable. I found myself a lot in my testing just triggering a ton of standbys and drawing a ton of standbys and having a deck full of dead air and being like, oh shit. So this card was a fantastic like get out of jail free card, helping me pay out dirty stock and just mill through my deck. Also, being a spammable also has an additional benefit here. Being a search a card and then discard lets you actually get standby targets out of your hand into waiting room where they need to be if you're having trouble getting a discard early on.
Yeah, you can just entomb your targets, basically. Just foolish burial your targets straight to a deck to waiting room.
Exactly. Or what I found myself having a lot was like getting my 2/2s stuck in my hand or 1/1s. So being able to like just grab a playable card and dump my target into graveyard is really nice. Honestly, that felt like the all-star of the deck. And then rounding out level 0s, I have 1 copy of the shop promo there. It is an on-reverse bottom decker bomb. And on attack, you get to look at the top 2 cards of your deck. Choose 1 of them to go to your waiting room, 1 of them to go on top of your deck. Choose your triggers really nice in general, especially in 8 standby. If you're in a situation where your deck's compressed and you want to run clean, you can you can look at the top card, see that it's clean, and just stop there and just have a clean trigger. Helps you get a clean trigger. Or when you're wanting to beef up your field with standby, when power matters, you can try to accelerate yourself into a standby there. This is a shop promo, so I don't think it's available to get yet. But if you don't have it yet, you can just run another copy of the Ironwood, I'd say, probably. Moving on to level 1s. 3 copies of the 1/1 RWBY standby target, 7500 Encore, and 1 copy of the 1/1 Glinda, which also has hand Encore, but is more aggressively statted, hitting higher power thresholds on attack, getting up to 10k, but sitting weaker on defense. It was kind of hard to fit a ton of backups in this deck, I found, especially since the top end is so heavy in this deck, splitting between the Pyrrha and RWBY combos. So I didn't really prioritize on having a ton of 1/1 targets because I felt like I wasn't going to be able to defend them reliably. But splitting the Glinda with the RWBY feels nice for that reason. Because if I'm not able to reliably tank up on defense with counters, the Glinda is still able to like hand on court and hit over stuff on the way back, which is really nice. One copy of the Pyrrha Suicider. Usually I try to get my level 0 Pyrrhas in memory by just crashing them out early, or just throughout the game, getting them onto the field and having them die. But in a pinch, it is nice to be able to get a Pyrrha from your waiting room into memory for your top end combo if you weren't able to see your Rises early. Because remember, the RWBY finisher doesn't do anything at all if you don't have 2 of the level 0 Pyrrhas in your memory. And that level 1 Pyrrha has the effect when it dies, you can put a Pyrrha from your waiting room straight to memory. So another way to get them in there. One copy of the 1/1 bottom deck bomb. I kind of consider this to be like a 5th 1/1 target. Kind of nice to be able to have an Adachi index in general, especially if I'm not able to reliably be the biggest standby deck in the room. It's nice to be able to have an aggressive answer to my opponent's higher level characters. And the Neptune's just good blue fix too. Again, you know, kind of short on blue fix in this deck because you're forced to run so much red for the combos. And in general, the standby and mill pieces. So easy way to shoehorn another blue card in there. And got one of the turkey counter. Yeah. I had it like as a just normal 2k counter at first, but being a surveil counter, I consider it kind of like, it's kind of like a money counter in the sense that it can help you get yourself to a cancel. It's obviously not as good, but it's like a third money counter, I guess, in that sense. Moving on to level 2s, we got 3 of the 2/2 standby target. You can use the red 2/2 RWBY as well. That like top checks you and sends the card to graveyard on attack. But I want an extra yellow fix here, just in case I ended up needing to play a Yang from my hand, or the next card, the 2/1 Jean Assist, which level assist to the stuff in front of him, and then powers up and gives Encore to your level 3 Pyrrha, which is your primary game plan at level 2. The Pyrrha standby will summon the level 3 Pyrrha, and then climax combo, you pay 2 and sack the climax to immediately stand the Pyrrha, and shuffle cards back into your opponent's deck from waiting room equal to the number of characters you have. So, really nice way to help push damage at level 2. Usually at this timing, your opponent is going to have like a low number of cards in deck ready to refresh. And being able to just shuffle a bunch of clean cards back into their deck then, and then just swing with a bunch of 2-soul attackers. Nice way to push some damage in the mid game. And yeah, in all honesty, I really like the Pyrrha combo at level 2. The fact that Pyrrha pumps herself and everyone else in the front row 1500 when she's in the center stage, it definitely lends itself to being able to do multiple combos 2 turns in a row, and your Pyrrhas just get massive then. Or if you swing with like a weaker lane first and then incidentally trigger a standby, you can standby out a second copy of the Pyrrha to further pump everything in your front row. Just a really good card in general for building your army. And then auxiliary level 2s, there's the 1 copy of the free fresh counter and 2 copies of the money counter. Money counter is like kind of one of the win conditions we can go for in the matchups where we're winning board and not able to get the RWBY clock kick finisher off because our opponent doesn't have any targets. In those games where we're winning board on the merits of Pyrrha being enormous, we just double down on that and just keep swinging and shuffling cards back with the Pyrrha level 3, and then hold up money counters to prevent our opponent's damage. But like we said during the set review, I know Carmen was very adamant about this. When you're building 8 standby, and he's not wrong. When you're building 8 standby, you got to consider all the other 8 standby decks in the room. When you're going all in on winning board and getting your pluses by winning on board and having the highest power levels, you got to see the other 8 standby decks out there. And RWBY does not tank up as big as some of the other standby decks. But you do have the trump card in your RWBY finisher. So, like I said before, in the games where you're winning field, you just double down on the Pyrrha combo. But in the games where your opponent gets the better of you and actually pulls ahead of you on board, if they're playing a bigger standby deck, let's say, you can always just pivot into the RWBY combo, which does not give a shit about your opponent's power level. She just sends the card across from her directly to clock without even fighting it. So whether you're winning board or losing board, you have an option you can pivot into with this deck, which I think is the strength of the 8 standby RWBY deck.
How has been getting like rubies off at 2? I think that's like the craziest thing about 8 standby RWBY, is that like even if your opponent's playing something bigger, you can like hit a standby, put a 3/2 RWBY in the back row, and then like do a RWBY combo at 2, and like delete one of their things, and like really set them behind. Does that like happen very often? Because I know you're playing into the Pyrrha too, so it's like it's a little awkward. But
yeah, the Pyrrha and the RWBY do clash a little bit. The Pyrrha wants you to win board, where the RWBY wants you to lose field so that you actually have a target to clock kick. Kind of what I was doing at level 2 with this deck was you kind of have to know your matchups, right? Like, you're sitting down across from your opponent, and you got to understand what their game plan is. What type of deck are they playing? If my opponent's playing a deck that's trying to play 8 standby and get really big on field, or maybe not even 8 standby, but something like, say, Hololive, where they're putting a lot of big early plays in front of you. And you don't think you're going to be able to win board for the rest of the game, then I start trying to stand by and set up my RWBY combos with any additional standbys I trigger into. If I'm playing against an 8 Global Soul deck and I can tell that I'm going to be bigger than them, usually if I hit extra standbys, I'll try to throw out an extra Pyrrha if I can to pump my field up even bigger.
Okay. Yeah, I just saw that'd be a cool line to go for. Is level 2.
I don't know I don't know how much you've tested 8 standby with this set, Carmen, but I know you were saying early on you were testing a lot of choice standby with the Pyrrha combo.
Yes. That was my starting point. I'm going to go through the whole thing in a minute here. Where I ended where I did, because I don't think a lot of people are probably even looking at the coffin I'm looking at. So,
I think coming from that perspective, you probably look at the RWBY finisher and be like, oh, it's nice, you can get a RWBY combo off at level 2. Wouldn't that be sweet?
Yeah.
But I think that's probably coming more from the experience of you playing with the Jeans and other stuff that are dying on the swing back.
Yeah,
with 8 standby, I'm either winning board or I'm losing board. So
I played that
mid-game. In that mid-game scenario where you're setting up the Pyrrha combo, you kind of have to ask yourself, you gotta look in your crystal ball and see how the rest of the game's gonna go. Are you gonna actually be able to win board or not? And figure out which combo you want to build your hand and field for going into your final turns.
I think the biggest thing with 8 standby, I did play 2 games with it on Weiss Fight. Slightly different build, but the James Ironwood, Bad Thundercock as I call him, that card is insane. That card's broken if you're running any number of standbys, and it's really good even if you're not. The double filter, the fact that you push towards a standby, the fact that you can exchange into additional filters or your level 0 cards, it lets you do stupid shit in deck building, running extremely low counts of brainstorms and important cards, because you're always able to get level 0s, and the entire point of your deck is filling your grave so that you can put big bodies out. Like that card is like in Quints, and it's a big reason like that 8 standby, 12 standby, quote unquote Nino deck is seeing so much is seeing so much play is because they have that card, and then this card is better than that card because that card's name locked to Nino, and this card is just do anything. Like it's just as good as we thought it was in the set review. Like card is absolutely bonkers. It's so innocuous because it's just 2 filters, but like effects like that are just really strong.
Did you guys have anything else to add on this, or?
I think I'm good.
Yeah, I think you covered just about everything.
Yeah, just my closing thoughts on 8 Standby then. I think 8 Standby RWBY is like... I think that this deck is not necessarily the end-all be-all. I think there's like a few tweaks I'd make to it still. I think, you probably don't need all 4 copies of the level 3 Pyrrha. I could probably cut that down to 3 and open myself up a spot somewhere else. But overall, in general, I think 8 Standby is going to be a very strong option for RWBY. Just for the sheer fact that you have the ability to pivot so hard and like the versatility to change your game plan if you're against an opposing standby deck or if the situation calls for you going into the RWBY finisher. Having the versatility to say, I'm not winning field, but I'm going to like pivot into this more aggressive option. I think that's the real strength of RWBY Standby. Hitting level 2 and then choosing your destiny from there.
All right. Okay, moving on. So while our viewers take in this, which is probably some things people are not currently looking at.
Woo! That is a pile, Carmen.
I will...
that is a pile.
It is not a pile.
Is that the villain deck?
I promise. Listen. Let me spin you a narrative. Let me tell you a story. So, one bright-eyed boy, myself, when reviewing RWBY and looking at the cards, I was like, holy shit, the Pyrrha is so sick. I want to play that at level 2, and then I can play money counter, and I can better player people, and it's going to be so awesome. Like, I'm going to be able to play all these cool off finishers. It's going to be so sick. Like, I'm going to be able to, like, better player so many people with it because I'll be able to hold up money, and then they can't leave a grave, and, like, I'll always have them on edge, and I'll have all these different options I can go into. And you know what happened? I played Pyrrha to the board, and I just never had stock again. And because I was a more normal deck, because I was playing the TD combo because of deck speed issues, I'll get into that when I get to the card. Like, I just felt, like, I just can't do it. Because it's not like 8 Standby where you just don't spend stock on anything, right? Like, you don't spend stock on anything, so you have that, like, 2 stock overhead, and it doesn't really matter. You can still, like, hold up money, even with RWBY not attacking. And that brings me to the next thing I tried, was where I went from Door Pyrrha Standby to Door RWBY Standby. And I was like, oh, okay, this is better. I'm, like, playing to this. It's kind of cool. It's not interactive. My opponent can't stop it. I have the Neo, blah, blah, all this crazy stuff. And then I go to my final turn, and I'm like, oh, this is so sick. Like, I'm gonna hold up money again, because money's the thing that I want to do the most. And then RWBY doesn't attack.
She takes all your stock.
And then I just don't have any stock. And I'm just like, oh, then I have to have such a good game, or I have to do, like, worse plays at other points in the game to be able to do what I want to do, which is do my combo, or if my opponent's trying to deny me, slam down my healers and hold up money, and then do it again on the swing back. I was like, okay. Well, that's what sort of brought me to here. Because this cool thing about Cinder, right? She has the exact same expected damage output as RWBY. It's literally the same. And in fact, it's actually slightly better because you top deck the card across from her. It still needs a quote-unquote target. It needs a reverse. It can get really big. Like, you can get to, like, 15-5, even more. You have a ton of pumps for RWBY. But it has the same expected damage output. But more importantly, the card attacks. So because the card attacks and because the card heals, I know a lot of people are talking about playing Yang, playing Blake, the Mocha, and stuff like that, because they top check 3, top check 5, respectively, which can get you into monies. And then if the Mocha sacks, you can, like, move a climax down, so then you have a cancel, and then you have money, but then the problem is how do you win field? Because even if you play the Cinder back row, which I'll get to in a little bit here, you're still like under a lot of stuff. Like I've even played into like Dal and like Kagi and stuff like that. Like because of the way the Cinder works, you can like shove yourself over a boosted president, like with the 1/1 in the back row. Like you can get over that, and it's like not difficult because of like the Nor brainstorm. Like you put yourself to like 16 without doing anything after you get a reverse in another lane because they can't have triple president because they don't play 3 of that card, and they would never do that. So like you can shove yourself over president with Cinder, which is really, really cool. And again, same expected damage output and attacks, lets you hold up money after it. And you have so many draws to like hold 1 money counter, like not a big deal. So that's what led me here. I'm at TD door, Cinder top end. And that's the end of my story, so now I'm going to talk about the deck. First thing you're going to notice here, for Neon Cat, this card is ignorant. I hate this card. I hate that I'm playing this card. I hate that this card is good. I think that when cards like this are good, they degenerate gameplay. Every person I've sat against has like rolled their eyes and groaned because they know I'm playing for this card because I've talked about it. When I've sat across from people playing this card, because like Dean and Nico and like everybody else, like people who have RWBY online that I've been testing with outside of locals, have been playing for Neon Cat. The card's just ignorant. The card's obnoxious. I hate it. Like I hate that this card is so good. Because you play it down, you dunk their card. If you go first, it can coin flip back. If you go second, you dunk their card unless they're lucky enough to open 2 runners or 2 chasers or something like that. And then if they do that, then they might already neg because you have cards that can hit pretty big anyway. And then if it coin flips back to hand, then your opponent can't go slow anymore. They have to field 2 cards, which probably sends you to 1, which then more reliably gives you reverses for your TD RWBY, which is really good about the card. Like, so the card feeds into giving you reverses for your level 1 combo by accelerating you to 1 early, especially if your opponent's standby. Like, standby can't attack once and pass if the card pops back to hand, unless they're okay with losing their card again. Which is like a really annoying implication because the standby, you want to go slow, you want to build your army, you want to put your 1/1s out. And even if your opponent does do that and they don't care, your level 1 combo gets so big that you probably board break them anyway, unless they've somehow sacked and sculpted multiple backups as well. So the Neon Cat has like really disgusting implications. I hate when cards like this are good, but the card is good, and because I acknowledge it's good, I run 4 copies because I want to see it going first, I want to see it going second. And past the first 2 turns of the game, the card doesn't do anything. So because I got to see it early, I'm playing 4. But yeah, I hate it, but I'm playing it.
To quote you from the set review, the card is cringe.
Yeah, the card is
on
cringe.
On the cringe to based scale, this was an instant cringe.
Neon Cat is cringe. I hate that this card is good. Because I didn't want to admit it. I played the TD RWBY first, and I was like, I played against Neon Cat 1 time, and I said, this card is just better. I have to play this card. Unfortunate truth, but the card is good. Please sleeve the card, play the card. I know you don't trust, because I also didn't trust, but sleeve the card, play the card. Card's gross. Like, even completely off color for the deck. We're not playing a single late game level yellow, we're playing a 4 of. 3 clean cut. I don't even want to play clean cut in this deck. It's not doing a lot, but the 2K pump is really important, especially against Dal if they have a boosted Kermi. That's why it's in the deck. It puts you over boosted Kermi in the first lane. So then you cascade with your plus 2K on Minamis and just kill their entire board. It hasn't failed yet, and we've like set up scenarios like where like worst case scenarios like versus Dal, and it's still, because of the clean cut, you are able to clear their board. So it's necessary. And if you do go second, you do have the option. You can just clean cut your Brainstorm or something. It's still a plus. Still gets you 3 stock. If you want to go fast, it gives you the option. So you can be an annoying piece of shit like grinder with like Neon Cat, or you can go fast and generate 3 stock. You can do whatever you want. So it opens up the option there. 3 Amber, because we have to. This is just an on-play like Krista. It can take anything off its clock plus effects. Pay 1 clock yourself. You take any remnant. I do miss having Lai Ren in this spot. I was playing Lai Ren when I wasn't playing Cinder. I do miss that card. I think that card's extremely good. I'm very biased towards Mayuri. I'm sure Brian is too. Yeah, my Uri Ricky, where you mill 3 and you put 1 in clock of your choice and then salvage it, like gives you extra targets. It gives you first deck speed, but unfortunately we do have to play this. At least it is 3k on turn, so it's like a decent like beater. You like play it down and then it can like kill something, which is fine. Only 3 because slots and no real reason to run more. And it's gonna like delete it. It doesn't really delete itself later, but you know I'll get to that when we get to the 2-1. 3 Chad Thundercock. I already talked about this. Card's broken. Even in a non-standby deck, it lets you do dumb stuff like have important cards be one-ofs. Like Climax Swapper, our only Climax Assurance in this deck doesn't matter because if we have an Ironwood and that card is in our grave, we have that card. Same goes for Drop Search. Same goes for Blake Spammable. Only 2 Nora, also for that same reason. Like Ironwood becomes functional additional copies of your 2 and less ofs. Which is like just really, really disgusting interaction. Why the card's so good. I think pretty much every RWBY deck should be running this card. It's like a reason to play RWBY, which is like insane to say, but like, you know. Notably, I am playing the Yang Drop Search, and I am not playing Zwei. Zwei is a card that has randomness, and I don't like randomness, even with the nice little mill too. I know it's access to both zones, but I'm playing 8 Door, and I'm playing a Salvage Brainstorm, and I don't care about randomly accessing deck. I want to access deck when I need to access deck. So that's why I'm playing Yang. It doesn't go any further than that in terms of like my logic of this over Zwei. It's Zwei is random deck access. Deck access is important to me. I will not be having random deck access. I will be having guaranteed deck access.
I think that's... I agree with that too. Because while I do like prefer the Zwei in a vacuum probably, the fact that you're on 8 Door... and a Salvage Brainstorm, you know, you don't have a ton of deck access, so the times when you want it, you know, you're 100% sure you want it.
The card's definitely good. I would not call Zwei a bad card. It's just it's not for this deck, I don't think. And it might not be for me as a player. I think it's a personal preference thing. But the card's definitely good. All right, on to level 1, TD combo. Not a lot of people are playing TD combo. I don't know why. There is nothing in the meta right now that you care about that is denying you reverse. There's one deck. It's Konosuba. And even against Konosuba, if they give you like one lane, you're like still okay. You're not having like the worst time. The big reason to run the Trowdock combo over anything else is that you just don't hit the refresh timing. I just can't see it. Like without the Trowdock combo, like with Trowdock combo in the deck, in this deck specifically, I am hitting refresh when I need to hit refresh pretty much every game. Unless the games where your deck just fucking explodes because this is White Schwartz and you can be playing the most consistent deck in the universe and dry climaxes and lose. But like if the game is even going remotely normally or even badly, I've been able to mill out in bad games and like reset. With this, it's a lot of deck speed. The fact that the mill comes after, I mean, it's kind of refreshing that the mill comes after your attack, especially on your last attack. If you have climaxes left in deck, it's a nice little boon to Minami that you otherwise don't get, and you don't really think about it until you're playing the card versus playing. Pretty much everything's been Magro. There hasn't been like a lot of Minami around. But the big thing about this card is 7/5 on its own with the climax down. And for every reverse you get, it pumps another 2k to another lane. So you can cascade over your opponent's standby boards very easily and just clear your opponent's entire board off. The fact that it ties with a 1/1 base is really important. I think if this card was any smaller, even just 7k, it would be so much worse. The fact that this card starts at 7/5 in a meta that's like more standby focused, even against Kaguya, like against the Miyuki, like which is a 7/5 in front of the thing, like it doesn't really matter because you can always build over the level on Kaguya board. That's not a problem. But even still, like all these big cards at 1, you're able to beat over, and you can very easily clear 2/2s if you have triple of this down. Your last RWBY swings in at 11/5 without any additional support. That's really big, and it keeps it relevant throughout the game too. And when we get to the 2/1 Weiss, that's another reason to play a combo.
Yeah, like maybe swings even bigger too because you have the Nora Brainstorm. Like each reverse is giving you an extra 500 for each of those you have down.
And you have the Yang to start you out at 9/5 if you need to, so you're tying with 1/1s with backups at worst. You're challenging like Karumi, like 1/1s that are buffed from the Brainstorm or a 1/0 or something like that. Or like after like killing a 0, you're definitely over them, even if they try to play counter. So yeah, it's just a lot of power. It's a lot of rolling power.
There's no shortage of power pump in RWBY.
Yeah, and even if they like you said, even against like a Konosuba or Attack on Titan, or even if they have like pop back or aren't giving you reverses at level 1, usually that could be pretty damning for a combo like this, where like you have like one shot at level 1 to get it, then that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that you have the level 2 Weiss to go with it seems to me that, you know, if they have the pop back on a turn, they have it. Whatever, you don't get your combo. But it seems like if your opponent stumbles at any point, if they leave themselves open for even a single turn, because the Weiss draws so many cards on her part of the combo, you know, you can still end up getting all your pluses on a future turn.
Yeah, the 2/1 Weiss is a massive overperformer. I want to finish talking about the ones real quick first, because there is this Nolan. A lot of people probably haven't seen this card before. Even myself, I might have trashed this card in the set review. I might have been dumb. But this card is also a massive overperformer. The Nolan is a cost bomb. It is a bottom decker cost bomb. It is 2K. That's important. Even with a climax down, you are under Shizu, which is the main card you are looking to cost bomb out in the English meta right now. But it has this other cool effect. So you know how cost bombs are shit into standby, right? Well, this card has on play, freeze a character on your opponent's board. It still stands, but it can't move. So if your opponent like standbys a card to back row, all right, like a 2/2, like in a normal standby scenario, right? Like 2/2 goes to back row. That means it can't move anywhere. It can't move up to front row, which is the thing that Andy always talks about, and I always thought was fake. But I've got to apologize to Andy right now. That's a real play. Even if your opponent's trying to do something like what is it, like not overplus, and they put a card they want to attack with next turn in their back row, you just freeze it. Like you can't use a card. You can't do it. But I think the big thing for this card into the English meta against Data Live, you know how annoying the 1/1 Yoshino is. You know how stupid that card is. This card kills that card. If you have the Nora Brainstorm down, this card stops that card from being able to move, and after one Nora pump, ties it and removes it from the board. So it's like a 1-card answer to Yoshino, which after their board is locked, you can like probably again cascade over your opponent's other 2/2 boards if they're like super sacking. Let's say they have like a 2/2 in back row, a 1/1 Yoshino in front row, a lingering 1/1 Kurumi, and like a 2/2 Toka in front row, like hell board scenario, where like against the like that would be GG against a lot of decks. You play down to Nolan, you like freeze the Yoshino, and then you just run over their whole fucking board. And yeah, they have the 2/2 they move up the next turn, but you like just killed an entire board that they were never expecting to lose. And they probably don't even have a hand to follow it up the next turn. The card's been really, really gross. Which you can also run here at level 1. I've been talking about it with a couple of people. You can run the Winter Snee, the level 2 killer. You can run a copy of that as well. You probably cut Chad Thundercock, a James Ironwood. As much as I don't want to cut that card at all, you can put that card in at 1 as well if you're like super, super hard up against standby. But I don't think you need it. I think the Nolan's actually good enough on its own. The card's been a really big overperformer. But last card at level 1, the Neptune, it's the Adachi. The plus 1500 has really good synergy with the Weiss and additional copies of your level 1 combo because it gives 1500 power on play, which can give, you kill a big thing and then your Weiss and some other card run over something else. Can let you clear 2 lanes. It's like a smaller, shittier version of those 2/1 RWBY bombs that like pump and also kill at early play. It feels like that, but like as a 1/1 as an Adachi. So the card's been pretty good. Any comments before I gush about the 2/1 Weiss?
I don't think so. Go for it.
All right.
I have one additional thing to say about the Nolan at level 1.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, I think it's just so obvious that you didn't mention it, but the lockdown effect can also be used with your RWBY combo to like ensure you get a reverse there so they don't run or whatever.
Yes, they can do that. It hasn't been like something that's come up because RWBY's sort of like a you hold back RWBY a lot of the times that you can't multi-reverse because it's a board break. So like the normal play pattern of the deck that doesn't typically come up, but you can do that. You can freeze down runners so that you can get your reverse. It's probably better with clean cut, honestly, if you're trying to like dirtle a turn and wait. You can freeze a single runner and then use your clean cut to save something else. But yeah, moving on to level 2. The Weiss Teamwork, massive overperforming card. It's on play, drop assassin, so 500 times board, including itself. Incentivized for you to play it last. That's really good with the Blake, since the Blake's a 2 or less. It doesn't conflict at all. Because you have to ditch hand for the Blake plus this RWBY and the door is a really good way to like sort of rip your hand back after going down in hand to play a stock healer, which is a really cool interaction. But yeah, the Weiss is on attack. It gives itself and any other character on your board on reverse. Check up to 2. Add any characters you find there. It doesn't add events. Obviously, it doesn't add climaxes. But in those games where you're against people trying to deny your combo, they're trying to be really cute, and you like just sort of wait and you hold your cards back and you like do a clean cut and you like just hang out, and you might go down to like a 3-4 card hand, and then your opponent goes, "Okay, I'm level 2 now. Here's 2 big cards," and then you go, "Well, I don't care about your cards being big. Why something else? Draw a new hand." Been really, really good, really overperformer. But yeah, it's really, really crazy. There are games where like you have 2 doors in hand sometimes, and depending on the way the game's going, like if your neons are hitting in the early game, and then you have the Weiss and like 2 turns of combo with the RWBY, and like you clean cut a 1-0 RWBY to the back row. I've had games where you just like stop clocking at 1. They are rarer than we talked about in our set review, but like they do still happen. Like there is the ability for that to happen in your games that are going really, really well for you. But you know, it's Weiss Schwartz that usually isn't happening. You're just fighting tooth and nail every step of the way
against your own deck. Yeah.
Yeah. But moving on, the Cinder, the 2/1. This card is like the reason to not play the RWBY top end. I think it's just this really innocuous 2/1 2K in front assist where on play you send the Amber from your grave to memory, which is the condition for your combo to get power, your Cinder finisher. That's actually it. It doesn't have a condition for anything else. It's just for it to get power. But power is really important. But still, that it's not like you're completely dead in the water if you whiff it. But even then, I have not whiffed this even once. Even in my absolute worst games. Even the game where I only had 4 turns, where I drew every climax in my deck, and everything was going wrong at locals the other night, I still was able to set that at a 3-2 split. So a 3-2 split, you're done. Like, and it doesn't even eat into your slots like the Rize or anything. If you don't want to play the Rize, it's your Ricky and your support, and you're done. It's like not a deck building concession at all. And then the big thing is that once that Amber's in memory, this 2/1 2K to front assist also gives 1500 power anywhere at the beginning of your climax phase. So it can shove your stuff to really obnoxious numbers. Without a climax, you're like Blake 3-2. You can like go to 14-5. You have a climax down 15-5. Like with the Weiss 2/1. Like I've had a lot of games where like, okay, I have 1 Weiss in my hand from like the Minamis. I have the 2/1 ready to go. I have my early play Blake, and then I just rip a RWBY climax off the top of my deck, like initiation. And I just play down like my whole hand basically. Like I play the Blake, I discard a card, I heal the stock, I play the 2/1, I play the 2/1 Cinder, and then I just rip an entire new hand after that while clearing my opponent's board. It's been a better board answer than playing 2/2s at all with standby. This was more effective than playing any amount of 2/2s in like TD door RWBY standby. It was a more effective mid-game clear than playing standby at all, which is been pretty disgusting. But yeah, card's great. This 2/1 is like the reason you're playing it, and it really helps you play the money counter, which is why I'm playing 3. We want to always draw 1. We always want to hold up money behind Cinder, because that's our whole game plan. Cinder is, now that I'm getting to level 3s, you have the Amber of Memory. She's 11k base. She heals on play. It's normal heal. And then on reverse with the Climax, which is a door, you burn 1, and then you top deck your opponent's character. So you burn 1 damage, which is, an attack for 3, and then a burn for 1. So same expected damage as RWBY. It doesn't dodge combat. It's not guaranteed, but it is the same expected output. And then you make your next swing more likely to stick by top decking a card. You also hard remove sticky and annoying cards from the field. Like when Hololive comes out, Rushia, that's the big thing. You top deck all your opponent's Rushias and you send them to clock, one of the only places Hololive can't get them out of. And even though the matchup is really rough up until level 3, I think after playing into it a little more, Cinder sending them to top deck might be the only thing that lets you come back in that matchup. Because I think that's one of your roughest matchups, actually, for RWBY in general, is probably the Rushia Hololive deck. Just because of how crazy the level 2 is. But yeah, it's been great. And then obviously, you attack 3 times, so now you're always going to have stock for money counter. So you hold that up. 3 Blake, early play, we talked about it. It has really good synergy with the Weiss 2/1 and the 2/1 back row support. I think it shines most in this deck. These are playing a really good assist. So it's going to be 13k cross turn at 2, which is comparable to Pyrrha. Pyrrha's 13.5. Pyrrha does buff your whole board, but it does give you, like, as a 1k1 deck, a pretty fat body to put on board. The Salem, we already talked about it. Really good card. And this card, why aren't people playing this card? Why aren't people talking about this card? The RWBY Vital Festival, this 3/2 RWBY. On play salvage, end of attack, pay 2, ditch 2, burn 2. Sounds boring, sounds kind of whatever. But when you think about like a defensive deck, right? This card cantrips into other cards that you want. So either like you grab your free fresh counter, like if you're worried about what you might trigger, you can grab your Salem to then do like an Icy Tail or do a stock swap. You can grab another Cinder. You can grab, if you're having a rough stock game, you can grab your Blake and get a heal, and then you have a little bit of extra stock. But most importantly, you can attack with this card last when you are planning to hold up money counter, and if a burn 2 probably kills your opponent, you do it. And if it doesn't, you just hold the money counter and wait.
Mm-hmm.
And the RWBY isn't like on play, only on the turn it's played, you burn 2, ditch 2. If you can protect this card with the money counter that also buffs, you can do it on the next turn. And it'll always be able to pay for itself. And as long as you can clock, you can always do it again. So, like, the card has really good synergy with this, like, defensive top-end strategy of where I'm healing, I'm doing Cinder, I'm holding back money counter, like, I'm pushing for Cinder, but I don't really care if my opponent cancels because I'm going to hold up money counter, and I'm going to bleed them out at the top, and eventually I will win because I will heal more, and I will cancel your lanes, and I will continue to slam these cards down over and over and over again until I win. Which has been really, really, really consistent so far. I don't think enough people are looking at the Cinder because it is just Goblin Slayer, and that card was kind of whatever. Even in Summer Pockets, where the card had anti-backup on it to make it easier to get reverses, it wasn't even played as much. So, like, I understand why people are sus on it, but when in context of the set, in the context of the other tools, this is just played money counter the best, and that's what I want to do with the set. So that's why I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
I want to
the
play
question
money.
about the why aren't people considering the RWBY level 3 off finisher? I think there's just so many good off finishers in this set, and it's tough to find space for it. It was a card I wanted to run in Choice Standby also, I think it pairs really nicely with the RWBY finisher as well.
Yeah.
Because if your opponent doesn't leave you 3 lanes to clock kick, if they only leave you, let's say, 2 lanes, you can use this in your final lane to still get some, burn extra burn damage off. And it's a good standby target too, because like you said, you can do this effect every turn. It's not limited to the turn it comes in.
Yeah.
So I think it's just finding a deck spot for it. I think like something you had mentioned, before the recording was you were trying to fit a Neapolitan into the deck too to be able to set up to set up Cinder reverses if your opponent doesn't give you any. And I feel like that RWBY off finisher is kind of like taking that spot unless you wanted to cut something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the one, like, the few cards I did want to try to squeeze in were, like, I wanted to put in a copy of the Neo for, like, a little bit of extra climax assurance and, like, the ability to burst my opponent down if they're trying to crash out, like, just to give me a pivot. Not that I'd want to, but, like, because I'd rather, like, wait, heal, and hold up money, but it gives me the option to. I want to test that. I want to test a copy of the Nora that, like, 4 more early play gets big to clear lane anti-backup. Because anti-backup doesn't mean I can't play money. So it lets me do that, and that's another really big lane that my opponent can't deal with. And then also, like, a copy of the level 2 killer. All of which means I probably have to cut an Ironwood, because I don't know if I can cut any of these other cards. Which is pretty unfortunate, but I think cutting an Ironwood is probably okay. I'm gonna try those 3 cards. I gotta find which one works best into, like, English stuff. I gotta run into more Kage and Dal, and probably more of the, like, random, like, tier, not the tier, just the tier 0 stuff, but, like, upcoming stuff and, like, tier 1 and tier 2, like, random stuff, and see what plays best into that board. I'm thinking it's probably the 1-0 Winter Sneak, because it's just another attacker. Like, the most innocuous card to put in. It's, like, the safest card. Or, like, the Nora. I think the Neo might not be needed. I think you'd rather heal and hold up the money counter than, like, go for random pushes. But, I mean, like, you can get a climax with it. So, like, maybe that's enough.
I mean, I don't even know how much of a concession it would be, right? Like, you could just turn one of the Nolans into a Winter. And then, if you were already thinking about cutting an Ironwood, just turn an Ironwood into a Neo. If you think you're okay cutting a level 0.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean that only takes you down to 18 zeros, which I feel like would be fine if you wanted to go that route.
I think I'm at 18. I think it would take me to 17.
4, 7, 10, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
okay.
cutting an Iron One would take me to 17.
17, yeah.
But I mean, then again, you still have, like, you have the 3 Yangs and the 4 Neos. That's a lot of plussing level 0s.
Yeah. The Yang I always had when I'm playing this deck, I'm looking at as mostly a pump.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like most about the Yang clean cut. It's like, unlike a lot of clean cuts where it's like you want to, like, its only real purpose is to clean cut something and you want to try field with it. The fact that you can just, like, run Yang, like I was in 8 standby, right? Running it more for the power pump than the clean cut effect.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, like, very versatile. Like, any point in the game, you're not upset to see it. Because, randomly, sometimes you'll be over your opponent's weak shitter lane and get a clean cut in the mid game. And then also sometimes, you'll give the extra 2,000 power to get over something, whether it's for your level 1 combo or just to incidentally win a lane. Or if it's just to top check and see the top card of your deck. It's just nothing bad to say about Yang.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, the first effect is just really good. I mean, there's a reason Chica got put on the ban list in Japanese. Yeah. Like, that effect's really good. And, like, it's a clean cut. It's not quite a search Ricky, but it's still a plussing card. So, similar veins, but different.
I can't believe Yang clean cut's going to be the first card on the English ban list.
But
I don't know about that.
this
is really good.
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
This is where I'm at. I think I've played with this list. Nights locals, 2-3 nights playing online. I probably have about approaching 20 games with this, so not a lot. But, like, it's been slapping. I can't deny the list has felt absolutely rock solid. And I feel like it's one of those decks where I feel like the games where I'm, like, losing are like, oh, well, like, the damage just didn't go my way. Where I don't think it's ever like the fault of the deck, and I think that's like the sign of like a good build. Is this the best build in RWBY? I don't fucking know. We haven't fucking tested it enough. It hasn't been out long enough. But I think this might be the best way to play money counter.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm playing RWBY, I want to play money counter. I want to play the good zeros, and I want to play money counter. Like that is why I'm playing.
Yeah, I guess you gotta like have your winning image in mind there.
Yeah, for
sure.
sure.
Like I think for RWBY, like you either want to be doing that, like you're saying, like play the good zeros and play money, or just use the fact that the RWBY finisher is a clock kicker and dodges combat. Like in metas where that's good.
Yeah.
And I feel like this list could pivot into that too, right? Like it can kind of like. This list can kind of adapt based on the format, right? If you need the RWBY clock kicker, you can like cut the money counters and the cinders and go for the RWBY package. But
yeah, like so to give you an idea of what I was playing before this, I was playing something very similar where cinder was RWBY, the money counters were 2/2s, the 1/0 Nolans were Piras. And like the zero lineup was trimmed down to fit in 3 Pira Rizes, and stuff like that. Well, I didn't have the 2/1 Cinder back rows in either, so like that was where I fit my RWBY stuff. And the reason why I went, like another big reason why I went to 8 door, not just because RWBY didn't attack, it felt like in the hybrid decks, putting out a 2/2 did nothing. Like, absolutely nothing. Like, it did almost nothing for me. Versus, like, just at 2, playing down a 2/1 Weiss, playing down this back row, playing down my Blake early play, and ripping a new hand. Or just, like, clearing board with it. Like, the 2/1 Weiss, like, with the pump from the Cinders, like, 11k. Like, it's not the worst thing ever. You have a lot of free pump. So, like... Playing like that like felt more effective than ever standbying a 2/2 to the board in the hybrid deck, like ever. Like it just felt like worthless. So
I think that's just kind of the way the hybrid deck for RWBY plays. Hybrid standby is like honestly one of my preferred strategies. I really like in general hybrid standby.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that RWBY is like an awkward hybrid standby deck that doesn't really get as much mileage out of the 2/2s. Because it is nice, incidentally, like triggering into a standby and upgrading something into a 2/2, or like if you leave yourself an open slot in the back row to develop a 2/2 like that. Or just even at like level 1 being able to like, if your combo's off standby, being able to like set up a 2/2 like that or whatever. But I feel like you said, it's like, well, the 2/2's not really clearing anything or doing much for me. And I think that's true in RWBY because if you look at a lot of other standby hybrid decks, right, you have more assists. And just you're playing more for like winning board throughout the game, right? Whereas in this RWBY standby deck, right, you're running the level 1 RWBY combo, which incentivizes you to run the 2/1 Weiss, right? Which is taking the spot of some of your assists or like other cards that help you win board at level 2 cross turn, right? Weiss wins board on your turn, but not cross turn.
Which I don't think you want to win board because you want the
RWBY.
Yeah, you want
finisher to go off. That was the big
RWBY
thing
or the Cinder. The Cinder or the RWBY or the Cinder. I think the game plans are like very similar. The difference being that the Cinder plays better into money counter, which will let you untap more often. Which is all you're really looking to do. Remember, everyone out there, your whole board untapping is like a full field costless restand. So keep that in mind. That's why healing.
I guess that's one way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Living is like getting a full field restand. Yeah.
But in general, like
similarly, killing your opponent is like healing infinite numbers of times.
That's true too.
So. You know.
Yeah. To kind of finish my thought there, though, it's like I just don't think RWBY really can take advantage of the 2/2s.
Yeah, I don't know if they're
the same way. Just because it's again, you're not really building your board for power the whole way through. Because again, if you're going for the RWBY combo at the top, that means you need to lose field at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And it just doesn't necessarily lead into itself as well as like other hybrid standby decks.
Yeah,
Whereas the Cinder seems like a more holistic sort of build. The deck plays into itself better, probably.
Yeah, the deck has been like very simple but very effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fact that you aren't playing for board when playing with the RWBY finisher, I think, was an attributing factor in my list at the beginning too. Not playing 2/2s because I'm not playing counters. I'm not playing money counter. I'm not playing anything to support those 2/2s. So they're just they just be kind of there, and I'm better off,
Yeah.
Prepping Jean combo or getting a utility 0 or something on the board, something else to further toward my level 3.
Yeah, I guess like what I'm getting at is like I felt like in the hybrid deck the value of the standby trigger was very low for me. Like the trigger was not doing much. Like
I'm seeing the same thing in my list. Yeah.
Like it's easier for you, right? Because you're playing Pyrrha, so you are playing the standby from hand. Or no, you're not playing Pyrrha.
I'm playing RWBY.
You're not playing Pyrrha. Like when you're playing Pyrrha. Because I experienced that. When you were playing Pyrrha, the standby didn't feel as bad because you were hard playing it from hand.
Well, yeah, and that game plan is playing into itself very holistically and very, like, it advances level by level. Level 1, you standby out some 2/2s or your John assist. Level 2, you start standing out the Pyrrhas, and then each additional standby gets you more Pyrrhas, which continue the Pyrrha train into your level 3. And then hopefully you have some money counters at the top. With the Cinder deck, right? You're losing board on your opponent's turn, but then you hit back over them with stuff that gets weak on your opponent's turn. So then they can hit back over you, which then sets you up for your Cinder combo at the top. Which then is the most well-rounded finisher because it lets you push damage and money counter. With the RWBY, it feels. I really, really, really like the RWBY finisher. And I think it's a big draw to the set as a whole. But I think it maybe like an optimal build would like not be a true hybrid standby, but be something like a 3 climax weird list. Because like something that I was kicking around in my head, and this is maybe more of a closing thoughts discussion, but one of the next things I want to try out is something like Bar X Standby. Like the Penny Bar combo at level 1 into some split between like 2 Standby RWBY Climax and then 2 of something else.
Mm-hmm. There are rumblings.
I'm not sure what else, but like that seems like really solid to me. Like, more so like you're not like playing into the standby game plan as much, but in the games where you do want to go for the RWBY clock kicks, you can just pivot into a climax swap.
Hear me out. Okay. Not Bar, because I don't like the Penny. I don't like the Ozpin. I think green sucks too hard.
Actually, that was one of the things I was thinking was like 6 Bar.
I think green sucks way too bad. I mean,
green is definitely rough. There's not a lot in that color.
I think Penny is a totally acceptable combo. She's the bare minimum floor for a non-interactive combo that you would ever sleeve up and play. I don't think there's a reason to play her in RWBY at all. However, there are rumblings of a deck. There are theory crafts of a deck. 3 Weiss pants and some amount of standbys.
Level 1 Weiss pants?
Yeah, level 1 Weiss pants. Because here's the thing with the Weiss pants that we kind of missed when we were talking about it in the set review. There isn't a toilet to pair with it, but you can force a standby trigger. So it does let you like build a board. Maybe that is the hybrid deck that plays into the 2/2 better. Because your opponent's adding garbage to your hand, right? With Weiss, but if you use it to hand encore a 2/2 that you put to the front row,
so you don't care. Yeah,
you don't care that it's garbage. Yeah, it's like I think it might be the best way for hybrid standby to play like a 2/2, play a more traditional hybrid standby strategy. But the thing with that is that you're purposefully triggering climaxes, which means your future refreshes are worse, which is always kind of sus to me. But the Weiss does have a good power line, so like I don't know, maybe you can make up for it. Maybe you can like try to push it on the last attack so that you can pay it out with like a Leaf counter or something. Like maybe it's not as bad, the compression part, but like I think that might hold a lot of promise, because then you play like a minimal amount of the Pyrrha because like she eats your stock and it's annoying. But having the Pyrrha like exist in your deck means that then your opponent's on edge and can't leave a like one climax deck ever, or they lose. So like you're putting them on edge for that without ever doing it. And then when you're incidentally trigger standbys past 2, you just put Pyrrhas on board. Or you put rubies on board and you like play into the ruby harder. So like I don't know. I think that one might give you more options, and that's worth like thinking of. But because it also doesn't have the deck speed problem, because
some sort of
Weiss can look
standby
at 3
mix like that. Because then you still get you have so much climax swapping capability in Ruby, and with the pants being able to grab you like whatever standby climax you want and letting you develop what you want on the field. It could it sounds like it might fix a lot of the awkward issues I've had with 8 standby, where it's like you trigger too much or too little standby and things never really kick off. And it still gives you the chance to be able to pivot into whichever finisher you want,
Mm-hmm.
which sounds really nice. That's honestly why I was thinking the bar combo at level 1 too. I was thinking either that or the Weiss combo, because it still gives you deck speed, and well, the penny gives you selection as well, but compared to like the Ruby level 1 combo or the Jean level 1 combo, well, the Jean level 1 combo doesn't give you any deck speed, and like I lost my train of thought. And yeah, like the Ruby combo is like you have to eat up additional slots at level 2 for the Weiss.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think the Weiss at 2 is like a feather in its cap versus a drawback most of the time, though. Just because it's also free blue. It's free blue fix. Like, you have less blue problems.
Yeah, I agree, but it is still like 2 extra cards you need to sleeve up, which does like, if you're trying to run like some of the top ends, like the Ruby top end, right? Like you're already taking a lot of deck spots up there. And then if you want to splash Pyrrhas in on top of that, like it's just a lot of deck spots.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, I think we can leave it there. It's been about an hour and a half. I'm going to have to rename this to a Ruby deck discussion, like first impressions discussion, because I think that's a better angle for it anyway. We talked about
that's basically what it was.
Our first experiences. We don't think these are like the best decks by any means, but they are starting points for people. And if you're trying to build Ruby and you're trying to figure something out, like this is an English original set. We do not have Japan to go look at their tops to be like, oh, this is good, they're playing this, let's try this. We are on our own, so all those thoughts and deck building processes are become more important if people are trying to like figure things out. And the more we talk about it, the closer we get to the good deck.
Yeah, I mean, set's only been out for like a week and a half now, so I'm sure what is seen as the meta deck will change drastically between now and in a couple of weeks. So,
and if you have any takes that you would like to share with us, let us know down in the comments. We can have a discussion about it. That'd be really cool. Normal things we talk about is end slide every single video, but the thing I want to talk about is Weiss Fight. If you don't have your place in yet, you're still trying to get your hands on Ruby cards, you're jumping into Weiss because of Ruby, and you want to try some things out, you hop on Encore Decks, you make a deck, or you grab someone else's deck, you grab the link, you hop on Weiss Fight, make an account, log in, slam that Encore Decks link in, and then you are playing Weiss with anyone from all over the world right in your browser. No need to install anything. It's kind of like Dueling Book if you've ever played Yu-Gi-Oh! If you're familiar with that. There is a Patreon that you can support Weiss Fight. If you are already like using it and you want to support the project. There's also a Discord where you can leave feedback. The dev is very accepting of feedback and wants to make Weiss Fight as good as possible. So you can hop on there and leave some feedback, or even find some games. There's a voice chat in there. You can, or you can just like Dueling Book, just use the text chat, and there's functions in there for that. But it's just a way to simulate Weiss in your browser without having to install anything. So yeah, definitely give that a look. We'll also have links to all these decks below, Encore Decks links as. Anything else before we get out of here, guys?
I don't think so, but RWBY I think is shaping up to be a pretty solid set overall. I don't think it's broken by any means, but I think it'll do well enough for itself in English.
Yeah, I think it's after playing a lot of builds and seeing a lot of it being played, I don't think it is as meta relevant as Adventure Time, because Adventure Time has Demon Sword and has Finn and Jake.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's literally the cutoff there. But you know, it is what it is. I don't think that makes it bad. I think it's still a very good set.
I think it's just the obvious strengths of RWBY probably play more into like a different theoretical meta, right? RWBY's really good at breaking boards.
Yep.
With its lots of power pump and then RWBY combo to like clock kick.
Yeah. It definitely has unique strengths that would make you want to play it. Which for an English original, I think that is what they really need to be focusing on.
That's all you can ask for, I think.
As much as I fucking hate Meliodas, and I think that card is absolute garbage, like, that is a unique thing in an otherwise, I'm going to be honest, not unique set. Like, Seven Deadly Sins is definitely not a bad set by any means, but other than the Meliodas, it didn't have a lot of, like, unique
it's a bit bland
stuff
otherwise.
And flavor stuff.
Definitely.
But, like, RWBY is, like, the opposite. I feel like a lot of cards are, like, very interesting and very fun to play with and have interesting, like, implications for either deck building or play. So that is definitely a success. I think RWBY can be considered, like, a success for sure. In terms of upcoming content, are we free on set reviews or did we miss something?
Fate Camelot.
Fate Camelot. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We did completely miss Fate Camelot, huh? God damn it. I thought we were done.
Other than that, we're caught up until, like, AOT final season, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I guess.
So we have some time to do Fate Camelot.
We do have some time to do Fate Camelot. But yeah, we'll probably take a break. It has been such a long, like, just grind of set review after set review after set review.
Doing a lot of them, yeah.
So you'll probably see some different content. I am trying to get the live stream for locals thing figured out. The GoPro hates me. I found a way to have it like not shut down mid recording, and like now I have to make sure the firmware is updated and do some tests and stuff like that. So you might see a random Sunday stream pop up where we're testing, and then once we test it and we make sure it works, we can start slapping a camera down in front of our locals for just like a nice extra weekly content stream and some gameplay and highlight some of our players. Our scene's pretty active. So, all right, I think that is it. Pittsburgh White Schwartz signing off. We will see you guys in the next one.